The clink of plates and hum of casual conversation filled the small corner diner, but Melissa barely heard it. She'd been on her feet since sunrise, juggling customers, orders, and her signature smile. The regulars loved her for it. Mr. Jacobs always left a $10 tip on his $5 coffee, and the teenage girls from the nearby college always giggled and said, "You're like our second mom." Melissa cherished that. She found dignity in her work, even if her husband didn't. Jason used to love that about her, back when ambition wasn't a weapon. But over the past 2 years, things had changed. He got promoted at his tech firm, started wearing cologne to the gym, and began talking in percentages and profit margins. Suddenly, Melissa's apron embarrassed him. That night, as she walked in with aching feet and the smell of French fries clinging to her hair, she knew something was off. Jason stood in the living room with his arms crossed, a suitcase by the door. "You're late," he said, not looking up from his phone. "I had to close. Lisa called in sick." He snorted. "Of course. That's what happens when your life revolves around burgers and booths." Melissa paused, wounded. "It's a job, Jason. One I've worked for 10 years. It paid your car off. It helped with Emily's tuition savings." You mean the fund you started?" Jason cut in. "With your tip money? Please. She needs a real future, not Waitress pity cash." Melissa's throat tightened. Emily wasn't her biological daughter, but she'd raised her like one since she was 6. That pity cash is over $15,000 now. Every dollar earned from double shifts and missed birthdays. Jason didn't flinch. "You're holding us back, Melissa. You lack vision. You're just a waitress." That was it. No shouting. No tears. Just that sentence. Cold. Final. Within 20 minutes, she was out. One duffel bag. No goodbye from Emily, who'd been shielded from the scene. Jason claimed it was for the best. As she stood on the curb, looking back at the house she once turned into a home, Melissa felt the weight of betrayal and loss settle into her bones. But she also felt something else. Clarity. Jason had just made the biggest mistake of his life. And soon, he'd know it too. Melissa spent the first night in the back room of her coworker Janine's apartment, wedged between a stack of laundry and a cat that insisted on sleeping on her chest. She didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because she couldn't afford to. Crying was a luxury. She had rent to find, bills to pay, and a broken heart to ignore. The next morning, she was back at the diner by 6 a.m., apron on, lipstick forced, smile half real. Her regulars noticed the difference, but no one asked. Melissa was grateful for that. "Double shift today?" her manager asked, glancing at the schedule. "Triple, if you'll let me," Melissa replied without blinking. In the next few weeks, Melissa transformed her grief into grit. She picked up extra shifts, waitressed weddings on weekends, and even helped an old friend from culinary school cater a few private parties. Her feet bled, her back ached, but her mind was razor sharp, focused on something more than survival. Every night, she'd open her old spiral-bound notebook and write. Step 1, take it back. Every last dollar. Because Jason had forgotten something important. The college fund he dismissed? It was in her name. Only her name. Back when Melissa started it, she used a credit union account from her hometown. Jason never even asked about the paperwork. He assumed control, the way men like him always did. But he didn't have it. She did. She logged into the account for the first time in months. $17,246.33 stared back at her. All earned from tips, weekend doubles, and sacrifice. All meant for Emily's future. But now? It would fuel her own. She didn't hate Emily. But Emily hadn't lifted a finger while her father threw Melissa out like trash. No text. No call. No thank you. Melissa closed the browser and looked at her reflection in the black screen. "I'm not just a waitress," she whispered. "I'm the woman you'll regret letting go." And for the first time in weeks, she smiled. A real one. Not for customers. For herself. The morning Melissa transferred the entire college fund into her new business account, her hands didn't shake. She thought they might. After all, this money had been intended for someone else, for a girl she once loved like a daughter. But Emily was no longer her family. And Melissa was done sacrificing for people who saw her only when they needed something. She clicked transfer funds. Confirmed. Just like that, years of quiet generosity turned into the seed of something that was finally hers. She'd always dreamed of owning her own cafe. A small, warm place with real wood tables, mismatched chairs, and a chalkboard menu that changed daily. Not just food, but comfort. Community. She already had the perfect name in mind, scribbled at the top of every page in her old notebook. The second shift. Because that's what this was, her second chance. And she was ready to work for it. Melissa used her catering contacts to start small. She rented a booth at the local farmers market and sold homemade pastries, strong coffee, and sandwiches that people lined up for before she could unload her crate. She reinvested every dime. Slept little. Smiled more. Within 6 months, she secured a lease on a small brick building with big windows and a busted espresso machine she fixed herself with YouTube tutorials. Every evening, as she painted the walls and designed the logo, she imagined the look on Jason's face when he'd eventually hear her name again. And not as his ex-wife. As the woman who made it without him. One afternoon, while organizing invoices behind the counter, she got a message from an unknown number. "Hey. It's Emily. I know it's been a while. I was just wondering, did something happen to the college fund? Dad can't access it, and I need to pay for books." Melissa stared at the message, her lips pressed in a flat line. She typed. "The fund's being used exactly as intended, to build a future. Just not the one your father thought he controlled." She hit send. No explanation. No apology. Because Emily never asked how she was doing. Never said thank you. Never called after Melissa was thrown out of their lives. And now? Now Melissa was building a life from the very foundation she once laid for someone else. She flipped the closed sign to open, turned on the lights of the second shift, and smiled at the first customer walking through the door. The grand opening of the second shift was more than an event, it was a quiet storm Melissa had been building, brick by brick, recipe by recipe, betrayal by betrayal. The cafe had that charm she'd always dreamed of, pale green walls, warm golden light, indie music playing low, and tables filled with laughter and stories. The neighborhood had embraced her. Local influencers were tagging her food, a newspaper article called her the heart of downtown, and a line formed outside each morning before the sun rose. But Melissa wasn't done yet. 2 weeks after opening, she planned a soft launch dinner, a private event for community members, press, and a few faces from her past. Jason and Emily were both invited. Through a friend of a friend, she sent an elegant invitation with their names written in cursive gold. They came. Of course they came. Jason walked in first, wearing a smug smile and an expensive suit. Emily followed, clutching her designer bag and scanning the place like she expected a handout. They didn't recognize her at first. Melissa stood behind the counter in a sleek black apron, hair pulled into a bun, confidence radiating from her like perfume. When Jason locked eyes with her, he froze. "Melissa?" he said, stunned. She didn't flinch. "Welcome to the second shift. Table for 2?" Emily blinked. "Wait, this is your place?" "Every inch," Melissa said calmly, motioning them to a table in the back. Funny how tip money can go a long way when you're not paying for someone else's ego. Jason opened his mouth, but she held up her hand. "Tonight's about food," she said. "Not forgiveness." The meal was exquisite, handmade pasta, roasted vegetables from the community garden, and desserts that silenced the room. Guests praised her. Servers smiled. Melissa moved through the crowd with grace. Finally, she returned to their table with 2 glasses of wine and a sealed envelope. Jason stared at it. "What's this?" "Your final update on the college fund." Inside was a copy of the withdrawal slip. Her name. Her signature. Her money. "Everything was legal," she said. "I put in every cent. No one else did." Emily's eyes welled up. "But I needed that money." Melissa met her gaze. "So did I." She leaned in closer. "You watched him humiliate me. You let him throw me out of that house. You let him call me just a waitress like I hadn't raised you for 10 years. So no, Emily. I didn't spend your future. I reclaimed mine." She stood up. "You're welcome to apply here, if you're still looking for a way to pay for school." Jason stood, red-faced. "This is revenge." Melissa smiled coldly. "No. This is rebuilding. You just happen to be standing in the rubble." She walked away, head high, as applause erupted from the other end of the cafe. Weeks passed, and the second shift only grew. What started with scraped-together savings and a shattered heart became the most talked-about cafe in the city. Local chefs asked for collabs. Food bloggers lined up for interviews. Melissa's phone buzzed nonstop. She no longer walked with hesitation, only purpose. One quiet morning, while restocking shelves behind the counter, a familiar voice echoed near the entrance. "Excuse me, are you hiring?" Melissa turned. Emily stood there, no makeup, no designer bag, no entitlement. Just a nervous girl clutching a wrinkled resume and biting her lip. Melissa studied her, then gently nodded to the clipboard on the counter. "Fill out an application." Emily blinked. "You'd actually consider hiring me?" Melissa folded her arms. "I don't hire based on who someone used to be. I hire based on who they're trying to become." The girl said nothing, just sat and began writing. Melissa didn't smile, but she didn't look away, either. Later that night, as the cafe lights dimmed and the last customers left, Melissa sat at her favorite window table. A fresh cup of tea steamed in front of her. Peace surrounded her like a warm blanket. She thought about everything: Jason's smirk, the years she gave, the money she saved, the night she stood on the curb with nothing. And now? Now she owned the building he used to mock her for dreaming about. She didn't need revenge. She needed self-worth, and she'd claimed it. But as she stared into the quiet night, one question echoed in her mind. If I had stayed quiet, kept giving, kept loving, would they have ever seen my worth at all?